Greetings and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. This is Robert Phoenix coming at you live from South Central Texas, also known as Austin, where we keep it weird. That's Austin's motto, if you aren't familiar with it. Keep Austin weird. And we saw a bit of the weird rear its head yesterday. I believe it's, what's her name? Alex Jones's wife. I always forget her first name. I want to say Kim Jones, but I kind of have Kim Jong-il in my mind. Let me just clarify this. Just want to make sure I don't want to make any mistakes. This is my New Year's Kelly Rebecca Nichols. There we go. Thank you, Other Mind. So Kelly Rebecca Nichols, Alex Jones's ex-wife, had the most bizarre press conference yesterday. And it was broadcast live by KXAN, a local TV station here. And the press conference lasted 45 minutes. And it's kind of mind-blowing. I may put the link on my Facebook page. Where do I start with this thing? First of all, there's kind of a push to out Alex, that he's a fraud, so on and so on and so on. But she's using the divorce and she's using the custody battle as a platform for a new career. And she's becoming this advocate for parent alienation. Now, to her, I'll take her side on one item here, because I don't know personally, but I know impersonally what happens to people when they get harassed by the courts, whether it's male or female inside the court system. It's not fun. And she had to take 800 hours worth of therapy, court-based therapy, because Alex had a lot of money and a lot of lawyers and pushed extremely hard for Kelly to basically spend most of her time in therapy. And while that was going on, Alex took control of his kids, and it doesn't surprise me. Divorce is really ugly. Really, really ugly. And unless two people are semi-enlightened and can work through it in a way where it is equitable, and it's never really equitable, then the court system comes into play, and it's like a street fight. It's like a street fight, because I've been there and I've seen other people go there. And if you have lawyers that are aggressive, or the other person has lawyers that are aggressive, you're screwed. And when you get into people that have money and resources, you're doubly screwed. They can just keep coming back and taking up your time and burning your resources. It's a game of attrition. So I've seen that take place. And when that happens, people go into, if you're smart, you never get divorced. If you're smart, you marry the right person. I'm sorry, this is true. And you can say, oh, well, these things happen and people change. Well, yeah, of course. But I think we need to be selective and we need to be smart about the whole thing. Because if you're smart, you don't get a divorce. You find the right person, the right values. And values are so important. They're the most essential piece and component to having a successful relationship. If you don't have shared values, forget it. You'll spend most of your time in the relationship chasing your tail, whether you're male or female. And then being friends, really good friends, has a really strong place inside the relationship. So values and friends. Henry Mackow, who I enjoy reading from time to time, did a piece a couple days ago It's called Sex and Young Women Overrated. And he talks about how when he looks back on his life, he looks back on the choices he made personally for himself with women and how in many cases they were not just wrong, but they were driven by a sense of programming. And this is what he says: one of my biggest life regrets is grossly exaggerating the benefits that accrue from association with a woman. The idealization of sex, women, and romantic love in our society is characteristic of Satanism. Why? Satanism actively promotes false gods, i.e. idolatry. So he's talking about the cult of woman, which was raised to an extremely high degree in the 20th century. And what's fascinating is that the people that raised the cult of women, for the most part, were gay. If you go through Hollywood and you look at the directors and the producers in Hollywood and their relationship to the sex symbols, most of them are gay. It's an interesting dichotomy in a lot of ways. So the only reason I'm bringing this up is because if you are smart and you make the right choice with a life partner, you don't have to go through the bullshit. Unfortunately, most people are programmed. They're in a trance. They're making choices based on who knows what. You know, sometimes it can be a traumatic event that took place in childhood. And my experience as an astrologer has led me to not just believe, but see that around, I'd say 70% of the female population has been violated at a young age. To some degree or another. It's quite high. And this is just a professional guess, but this is what I've experienced. So that's one form of programming. And women begin to make choices based on their life mate out of this very corrupt kind of relationship. I'll never forget, there was a woman that I saw about 10 years ago. Actually, God, we're talking almost 20 years ago. I was seeing this woman, and she told me this story about her, when she was a young girl, that her next door neighbor, this man, would throw parties for the kids. And one day she was at the party, and the man brought her inside the house, alone. Kids are outside, who knows what, playing dart guns or whatever. She's 6 years old at the time, and he takes her inside the house, and he unzips his fly, and he pulls out his member, and then he takes her hands and he attaches it. And I thought, my God, this is shocking. This is really shocking for a 6-year-old girl. And she told her father. She told her father what happened, and her father did nothing. Did nothing. She said a couple of years after that they moved. And she remembered that her father did nothing. It was very clear. So how does this set up the cycle of relationship moving forward in life? And I think it happens more often than not. Anyway, getting back to this Alex Jones thing. Now this Kelly Nichols used this 45 minutes of live streaming not to just denounce Alex Jones, but to create an infomercial about this whole concept of parental alienation, which is kind of mind-blowing. Parental alienation. There's going to be a platform, and she's going to run this kind of national thing. She'll get on talk shows. I guarantee you, within 6 weeks, maybe less, she'll be on The View. And because Alex Jones was on The View, and she'll be on The View, and she'll talk about parental alienation, and then she'll make all the other talk show circuit runs, and Kelly Nichols will have a platform. Kelly Nichols did okay in that divorce. She got 2 houses. 2 houses. And apparently she got a payout of like $2.5 million, and she gets $45,000 a month in child support or alimony. Kelly Nichols did okay. You know, I mean, you have to ask yourself, would you go through, this is an interesting question, would you go through 800 hours of therapy for $2.5 million, 2 houses that are close to $1 million apiece, and $45,000 a month, say, for the next 20 years? Would you do that? Would you go through 800? I would go through 800 hours of therapy for that. As long as it didn't include shock therapy or drugs, I'd be happy. Sure. Absolutely. Let's go. Let's work some stuff out, man. I'm getting paid. Yo. Anyway, it's ridiculous. And it'll be interesting to see where Alex now goes with this, because apparently he's going to have a female foil in the spotlight for at least the next few months. What Kelly Nichols does with her new parental alienation foundation remains to be seen. And if you want to talk about parental alienation, I can raise my hand. I can speak right to it. Right here in old Austin, Texas, where the state of Texas comes right in and starts cleaving away at your rights and gets right in the middle between you and your spouse, ex-spouse, and starts to collect on those fees, child support fees. Thankfully, in the state of Texas, you don't have to pay alimony. Now, Jones did. He made an outside settlement with that. Keeping things weird. This is what Austin is good at. And speaking of weird, or not so weird perhaps, Donald Trump just kicked James Comey to the curb. That's right. James Comey, the director of the FBI, after testifying last week with the most mind-blowing testimony that you or anyone can hear and bear witness to. I mean, this is really kind of a mind-blowing thing, is that Comey said that Huma Abedin, he knew Huma Abedin was basically sending those files to Anthony Weiner from Hillary's server. Now, why didn't this come up in the election or pre-election? If they knew this, why didn't it come up? Now, James Comey was not the reason why Hillary Clinton lost. Hillary Clinton lost because, and you know, people say, well, this is just, you know, a whole pantomime, that this is the new world order and the false left-right paradigm and yada, yada, yada. And, you know, Trump played a role and Trump played a part. And I would say, yes, to some degree he did. And I also believe that Trump got into some very authentic expression during the election, and then he would flip and go into asshole mode. And he's a very complex guy. We've looked at this ad infinitum with this chart, which we'll get into a little bit before the show's over today. But I don't believe that they sat down at a table and Trump had a piece of chocolate cake and Hillary had a tall double scotch with a Darvon shooter. You know, I don't think that was happening. I don't think they sat down and said, okay, let's shake hands, let's go out and play this role and do this WWE style. I don't think that really happened. Because one of the things that you, for the most part, as we have moved into more sophisticated, to a large degree, emotional expression, there has to be a level of authenticity inside of an election or an electoral process so people will buy into it, at the very least, for the show. There has to be some emotional transference. And we saw that clearly with Barack Obama. People were on board, and they were on board from the jump. I mean, the guy was squeaky clean and, you know, filled with hope and change, and he'd be the first black president, and he was good looking, and he was articulate. And if he's going to be our first black president, man, this is the guy. This is the guy. And he was a product of a broken home, and he raised himself up. All those things. But there was emotional transference there. When it came to his presidential election versus Romney, there was less. There was less emotional transference of the re-election. And I think that some of those votes. In fact, a lot of those votes were rigged. Speaking of rigged, there was some rigging going on with the election in France, and I'll try to touch on that today too. There's a lot to cover today, and I'll get into it. So when Trump came around, there had to be some kind of emotional transference, or else it was just not going to work. And the come down from the buy-in can also be capitalized on if and when Trump would begin to flip his script, which we've seen him do quite frequently. The latest being on NAFTA, and apparently Jared Kushner. This guy's got to get away from the White House. I mean, he's bad news, man. Jared Kushner is bad news. Jared the Omen Kushner. So he apparently got on the phone with this other loser in Canada, Trudeau, and said, "Hey, you've got to call Donald. He really wants to get out of NAFTA. You've got to talk to him and talk some sense into him. Tell him why it's really important for our two countries to work together and try to come up with a better idea, a better plan for a trade deal that's really fair for all of us. He just wants to get out, and I think a really timely phone call on your part would work wonders." And he did. Justin Trudeau rang up the dawn. Now Trump doesn't want to get out of NAFTA. So the millennials right now rule in the world. We've got Jerry Kushner and Trudeau and Kim Jong-un, all millennials in positions of power. Emmanuel Macron is not quite a millennial. He's on the cusp of being a millennial. Pluto in Libra. He's right there, but he's not quite a millennial. But he's close. May as well throw him into the millennial stew. Anyway, so Comey gets fired. Guess where Comey was when he was told that he was fired? He was in Hollywood recruiting for the FBI. I kid you not. He was in Hollywood recruiting for the FBI. Can't make this shit up. So now we have Warpath Trump. As Mars gets closer and closer to his sun, his natal sun, which I think will be taking place, in about the 17th, 7 days from now, that Mars-Sun conjunction, his anger is going to rise, his volatility is going to rise, his patience, which is already razor thin, will get even thinner, and we're in for a ride here. I mean, again, Mars has transited Donald Trump's sun numerous times. However, it has not transited his son when he's president of the United States, and theoretically the figurehead leader of the free world. This is an interesting astrological dynamic. Hollywood has not abated. Stephen Colbert, Bill Maher, they continue to go after him, and they go after him with more and more salacious and in many ways undignified attacks on a president. It'll be interesting to see what Trump does as a result. Colbert is under investigation by the FCC. They're going to try to find some kind of decency or indecency piece around his really just degrading. Look, I don't care if you don't like the guy, but if you call the President of the United States nothing more than a cock holster for Vladimir Putin, it's just wrong. I mean, what if Hillary Clinton had been president? Of course, Colbert would never be ranting. He'd be attacking Hillary Clinton's detractors and doing it aggressively. But what if he said that she was just a cock holster for Vladimir Putin, which some might make a case that she was. If you look at the Energy One deals with uranium, big smoking gun there. Well, I mean, what would happen there? Oh my God, that's terrible. You can't talk about a woman like that. Well, what makes him able to talk about a man like that? You know, it's just it's a bunch of horse shit. I'm sorry. Even if you don't like Trump, you know, you can't have the double standards. It's just not happening. So Comey's gone, and it's going to be interesting to see who is going to replace him. God knows. How about Jesse Ventura? Everybody wants to bring Jesse in. Oh, Jesse Ventura, Jesse Ventura, Jesse Ventura would be great. Jesse Ventura, Jesse Ventura. I don't know if he'd be great, but it'd be interesting. I wonder if I can do Jesse Ventura. I'd like to thank President Trump for bringing me in and making me give me the opportunity to be head of the FBI. It's a really big opportunity here, and I hope I can carry the day and just show the American people what it's like to have a real freedom fighter sitting in the seat where James Comey, who did a responsible job, except when it came to Hillary Clinton, but I'm not going to get into that. What about Schwarzenegger as head of the FBI? I'd like to thank the President Trump, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of the FBI. It was a great honor and a pleasure to be the governor of California. But now, as the director of the FBI, I'm back. So it'll be interesting to see who comes in and takes over that role. And Feinstein was one of the first people that got on the phone with them and said, "Oh, we're going to find a really good, nice bipartisan candidate. Be fair on both sides." To hell with fair. Life is not fair. It's not fair. Unless, of course, you think that having to take 800 hours of psychotherapy for $45,000 a month and a $2.5 million settlement and $2 million houses is fair or unfair. That's for you to decide. A little bit on the French election today. Apparently, there were all kinds of ballots that were damaged. And they were sent out to Le Pen voters. I don't know how they do this. Direct mail marketing. Is this how France runs their elections? They send out the ballots, direct mail marketing. Why don't they just put a picture of a missing kid on there and a couple of businesses that you'd like to support at the same time? So the ballots go out damaged. The people make their vote. They send their ballot in or whatever, and they can't be counted because they're damaged. And they went out damaged, and there were a lot of them. So obviously they found ways to rig the frickin' election, and Marine Le Pen did not get a fair crack at becoming the next president of France. But I stumbled across this interesting story here on ynetnews.com. It's a magazine that is dedicated to the Middle East, Israeli news, and this is from their masthead, Jewish World. And there's a story here about Roger Auk, the Israeli agent behind enemy lines. I want to read this to you. We're going to go a little over today, but it's worth reading. The Israelis knew him by his pseudonym Pierre Baudry, which he used while working as Yedioth Aharonoth's correspondent in Baghdad. But Roger Auk was much more than your average journalist. Ooh. Auk's ties to the Mossad and CIA and his kidnapping by Hezbollah are now revealed in his new biography that has been published after his death due to cancer. In the summer of 1989, there was a luxurious yacht full of beautiful women in the French Riviera. A polite but straightforward Israeli man approaches French journalist Roger Auk. "My name is Amos. I'm Israeli. We have a pilot. Ron Arad is his name. He has been held captive since 1986. The Israeli man says to Auk without wasting any time on formal introductions. "We think the person who released you from captivity can help us," the Israeli man said. The Israelis, Alk reveals in a sensational autobiography released after his death, had asked to be introduced to a French businessman of Lebanese descent, Iskander Safa, known as Sandy, and in return promised Alk an interview with Sheikh Obeid, the spiritual leader of the Amal militant group based in Lebanon. Alk accepted the request and came to Israel, where Amos was waiting for him, along with the Mossad agent Tony and Israeli diplomat Uri Lubrani. The interview with Sheikh Obeid never took place, but Alk ended up with a different story in his lap. When he returned to Paris, Alk fulfilled his part of the deal and introduced Lubrani to the French businessman. During the time I established very close ties with Israel, Alk wrote in his biography, I would travel there a lot. I wasn't just a journalist. The Israeli intelligence services paid me to complete certain missions, such as secret missions in Syria under the cover of a reporter. These missions were at times very dangerous, and I risked the worst, including death in the case of failure. I traveled to Damascus a number of times in order to make contact with the local elite, doctors, researchers, and others, all of whom wanted to emigrate to the United States. Every time I would get the equivalent to a month's wage. Roger Alk passed away in early September as a journalist and France's ambassador to Eritrea. He was 58 years old at the time of his death. He fought cancer, which stuck him at the beginning of his career as a diplomat in the service of the French Foreign Ministry during the last 2 years of his life. Alk, a veteran combat war reporter who survived 391 days in Hezbollah captivity, decided in the last days of his life to write up his secrets, his adventures, and the mysterious missions he took part in. His services, he claimed, were not limited to the Mossad, the French intelligence services, who, according to Alk, knew about his work for the Israeli intelligence agency, also enjoyed the fruits of his labor, and later on so did the CIA. In his autobiography released 2 weeks ago, Alk wrote about the hardship of struggling with his captivity after he was set free. Check this out now. This is why I'm reading this to you. He also wrote of his secret daughter, Jean-Marie Le Pen's granddaughter, and of the interviews he conducted with Ariel Sharon, Ahmed Mouinier, and Yasser Arafat. Jean-Marie Le Pen's granddaughter. He knew himself that he would not reach the end of the adventure. What the hell is that about? This guy is the father of Jean-Marie Le Pen's granddaughter. It just goes to show you the world is not what it seems. We talked about this last night on Off Planet Radio, where there are layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of real, unreal, real, unreal. I mean, the rabbit hole is not your typical rabbit hole. We're beginning to find this out. And I think the truth for a lot of people would be just utterly confusing. It's there. It is there. But it's utterly confusing. Now, how clear will the summer dawn be? How clear will he be as he lurches forward with Mars getting closer and closer and closer to his natal sun? This is going to be interesting to watch. Get your popcorn. We may not go to war, but he just might decide to piss a bunch of people off and drain some of the swamp. Would that be considered a swamp drain with Comey? I think so. I think it would be. I mean, this is a guy who had ties to the Rose Law Firm and Whitewater and the Clintons. I mean, he's a dirty mofo. He's just dirty. And the whole thing is just an organized crime syndicate. So this could be considered a bit of a swamp drain. They took an eyedropper and took a few drops out of the swamp. Boom. It's great to be alive, isn't it? You got to admit, these are really interesting times. They may tire the shit out of you at times, but they're interesting times. I mean, where are you going to get, basically in one day, James Comey getting kicked to the curb, and Alex Jones's wife going live on local TV for 45 minutes, pimping out her new parental alienation platform with her as the director, executive director, based on her highly publicized and at times bizarre court battle with her famous ex-husband. It's a wonderful world. Absolutely. And when we look at it from that perspective, what does it evoke? A sense of humor. An absolute sense of humor. We can sit back and chuckle at times at the absurdity of the human experience. It makes things just a little bit lighter. So you know what to do, boys and girls. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. This has been your 15 Minutes of Flame. I'll be back tomorrow, 24 hours from now. Until then, enjoy your life.